Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of What If Civilization Started Over. We're going to get right into it, and we're going to be starting off in East Asia. Turning off the ideologies layer. So Korea is going to be expanding because I don't like that they don't have the entire Korean peninsula, so we're going to fix that. And they also will be exploring a little bit to the north, because they just kind of want to even out the land that they have. So that is exactly what they will do, as they will eventually look like this. Yellow Valley, which is what I'm going to call the northern country. You could also call them North China, Central China, and South China, but I feel like Yellow Valley, Yangtze, and South China are more interesting names. Yellow Valley will also have expanded, and kind of just in general, most of Central China is going to get explored, as trade, specifically between Yellow Valley and North India, which are two countries you wouldn't expect to trade a lot, but they've got pretty good relations and have been trading a lot, to the point that we're going to actually see the first city pop up that's not in an empire, as a trade route is starting to form between these guys. But it's not going to not be part of an empire for very long, as Yellow Valley will take some of the land, and North India will take the rest of the land, like so. These lands are not very well controlled by their empires, but they are there. Meanwhile, the rest of Central China will get controlled by by Yangtze, by South China, and actually by Burma. But it's not going to have that many cities in it, with only a few popping up here and there. And the same will actually go for Korea. At this point, I think it makes sense that Taiwan would be discovered and colonized by South China, and the new set of land will encourage 2 more cities to be founded there. Okay, and for one last thing for East Asia, at least for now, Korea will send out a boat. It's intended to go to China, but it gets blown off course. So first, it happens that it lands on this island, so Korea colonizes it. I think it starts with an S. Seju might be the name of this island, or Jeju. It's called Jeju. And then they send a boat from Jeju intending to go back to Korea, but it gets blown off course, and they discover, I believe this is Kyushu, as well as the southern tip of Honshu, and together a few more of the Japanese islands are explored. So Korea will set up a little colony here, and China will take the rest of these islands. Actually, I want to do something else, because East India is expanding their colony into modern-day Thailand, like so. And this is like the only really fully colony in the world at this point. But yeah, this is a colony. So East India is getting kind of rich from it, and in fact, they're the only they're like the richest theocracy in the world and close to the richest country in the world, but not quite. Some countries that are richer include Egypt, Mesopotamia, and South China. In fact, those are the only ones that are richer. But they will send some people to just explore the rest of these jungles. And South China will send some people to colonize this land. Burma will send some people to colonize this land. And East India will colonize the rest of the land that they explored. With only one more city popping up all the way over here, as well as one on the coast over here. Okay, now we're done with that. Let's go to Central Asia. Persia was originally founded by explorers, but has kind of stopped exploring. But they're finally going to start exploring again now that they are much more stable due to their state religion. So they're going to do some exploring into Central Asia until they discover this lake, which I don't know the name of it, and until they get to the north of the Caspian Sea, at which point they're going to declare themselves to be done and start setting up some colonies. So this is the land they claim. It's not necessarily colonized yet, but it will eventually be, like by the end of this episode, because we're still at the point where each episode's about 100 to 200 years. Actually more like 100 years probably. So by the end of the episode, 6 new cities will pop up in this land. And Persia is actually more populated than I'm giving it credit for. So yeah, Mesopotamia is the most populated country in the world, followed by Egypt. And they are bitter rivals, but there's actually 2 countries that are worse rivals. So right after Spain discovers the island of Britain, we are going to have the Second Punic War. This time, instead of being Sicily versus Carthage. It is Italy versus Carthage because Sicily, remember, unified with Italy. So the fight is going to start over the Balearic Islands over here, as Carthage controls them, but Italy has a claim to them because they were at one point, I believe, part of Sicily, and if not, then Italy is just saying they were. And they get into a big fight about this, and Spain and Egypt are both unable to solve it diplomatically, and Greece doesn't want anything to do with it. So Italy just decides to use their navy and tries to force themselves onto these islands, but Carthage sinks their navy on their way to these islands, at which point Italy declares war on Carthage, and Carthage was ready for this. So I'm actually going to go to the water layer. Carthage has their military around here. This is where Carthage's navy is, whereas Italy's navy is obviously pushing up against them, and they kind of have a lot of control over the rest of the Mediterranean, like so. So Italy is going to actually, not easily because Carthage is defending their coastline, but they will be able to finally land a ship, and they managed to land it over here because obviously Carthage wasn't defending this area since it's really far from the capital. But Italy will take this and run with it, moving to try and take this city, but not quite getting there. So instead, they hire Egypt to get people who are specially trained to fight in the desert, and they just start taking random, like, oases or whatever in the Sahara and kind of making them Italian and trying to get them to fight for Italy instead of Carthage, but it doesn't really work. And this city is actually getting liberated, so it was kind of just a bad strategy from Italy's perspective, and eventually they scrap the strategy and just retreat back, which is a horrible loss for Italy. And even worse for them is that Carthage has managed to push the naval front line like all the way to here and just barely land on the tip of Sardinia when Italy wasn't paying attention, and immediately they completely take the island. And that's going to be a really good base because Corsica is like too close to Sardinia to actually navally defend against, so that also gets taken. And from there, this small island of Elba, which you might know as the island that Napoleon got exiled to, but I believe this island is Elba, and if not, we'll just say that it is, becomes extremely important because it's the gateway between Corsica and mainland Italy, and if Carthage gets on mainland Italy, that's it for Italy. So Italy will withdraw their forces from Carthage and prepare for an all-out battle over the island of Elba, as Carthage many times tries to land but keeps failing. One time their whole fleet gets sunk. But Rome has a new strategy, as they pay Spain a ridiculous amount of money and start covertly moving their troops through Spain, through the Pyrenees, where with Spanish help they don't lose that many troops, down to the coast of Gibraltar, and across the Strait of Gibraltar into Morocco. And Carthage finally manages to take Elba while this is going on, and prepares to land on the Italian mainland. But around this time, the king of Carthage gets word that Morocco has been invaded, and such a large Roman and very small Spanish army has landed here that Carthage has literally lost all access to the Atlantic Ocean. And they also have some Egyptian desert forces, which are letting them take the Sahara portions. And this city is about to get taken, and Carthage is like, uh-oh. So they retreat most of their occupying forces from Corsica and Sardinia, expecting nothing to happen. And on Sardinia, nothing does happen, but on Corsica, there's a huge revolt, and the Carthaginian occupiers retreat, leaving Elba easy to be retaken. And with this, Carthage is able to start pushing back against the Roman forces over here. Meanwhile, I think this is Malta, but if this is Malta, then they just take this island. And they take this island. So they take Malta no matter which of these is Malta. And after that, they try to make landings on Sicily to take the city, which is important to the royal family, but not to the citizens. Meanwhile, the desert troops are doing their thing in the desert, as most of the Sahara Desert has been not taken by Roman forces. There's no one like occupying these areas, but they've basically surrendered and not really fought. Basically, Rome was like, don't fight for Carthage. And they're like, okay. So, yeah. It looks pretty on a map, but it doesn't really do much. All it does is it lets them take this city, which actually was important because that was Carthage's main gateway to the south. And now they are getting very much cornered. But for now, as far as the north goes, they're actually doing quite well, as they're almost managing to push back and take the city. And they finally make a landing on Sicily, taking the old capital of Sicily, which inflames Rome, and they start sending their entire army to take back Sicily, which works, because Carthage was secretly retreating and launching a new offensive onto the Italian mainland. And at this point, things are going very badly, as Spain decides to betray Rome and starts an invasion of the Alps, which goes quite swimmingly because they had specially trained Alpine troops, I guess. And at this point, Egypt recalls their desert troops and Rome is getting clobbered. But just when you thought that Rome was done for, they have one last trick up their sleeve, as there were a ridiculous amount of Roman troops waiting in Spain to go to Carthage at some point, or who were withdrawing, and Rome unleashes themselves in Spain as massive Roman, segments of the Roman army will pop up all throughout Spain, like in Brittany, for example, in Galicia, in southern France, and now Spain is basically fighting a civil war. And in case you thought they were just basically fighting a civil war, always wanted their independence from Spain, and they finally see an opportunity to get it. But first, they're going to have to fight back against these Roman army groups. So obviously, this Spanish army is no more. It's back in the hands of Rome. These Roman army groups connect back up with Rome and retreat to actual Roman territory, giving that territory back to France. This Roman army group instead starts fighting against France, who doesn't really have an army and so is quite weak. Spain is quite capable and is pretty easily able to start whittling away at these Roman army groups. This Roman army group retreats to the Balearic Islands and takes them from Carthage, who's completely stunned and not getting information quickly enough. And so they decided to just withdraw these guys from the mainland of Italy. Meanwhile, the Galician troops are holding up too well for Spain to actually deal with, because they know that a good portion of their east of their country kind of wants to secede from Spain. So they know they have to tread lightly, because if they ever withdraw from here, these Roman guys will come back and some separatists will come back and they'll threaten Spain. So Spain is kind of screwed with Galicia. Meanwhile, France is also being invaded by Spain, so they also just don't care about the Roman guys as much. And the Roman army over here is also invading France, so France is not doing well. They don't even have a capital yet. And all of this chaos leads Rome and Carthage to want to put their war on hold. So Carthage agrees to give back Corsica, but not Sardinia, in exchange for getting the Balearic Islands back. And they will formally annex Sardinia, and that is the only thing that changed as a result of this war. Well, that and what just happened in Spain. So let's finish up the Spanish Civil War, as some people might call it. France is doing very badly, and Spain is destroying them. The Roman army segment is destroying them, and so they call out to Rome for help. And Rome basically says, sure, we'll help you, but you have to give our army segment here back to us. And they're like, we don't really have a choice. Or they realize they don't really have a choice, and so they actually have to cede a little bit extra land to Rome. And at this point, Rome will start helping France out. And Spain is pretty strong. In fact, they were stronger than Rome at the start of this video, but I don't think they are now. And also with actual French troops doing most of the work, it's not going to be feasible for Spain to actually sustain this war, so eventually they sign peace with France. But Rome basically says, hey, France, we'll help you keep invading into Spain. And they basically force Spain to give Galicia back to Rome as well. And Spain is also forced to do that. So although it doesn't look like Rome actually gained from the Second Punic War, and they technically didn't, they sure are a lot bigger than they were before the war. And France will put their capital right in the center of their country. Actually, no. And France will put their capital in the south of their country because I think that's fun. Following this, some more exploration will happen into modern-day Germany because I want this to be explored, and it's kind of crazy how little of Europe has been explored at this point. And the Roman army segments will just rediscover what was discovered of Britain right before the war, and they will set up their own colony over here. This is a colony of a colony, basically. And there's going to be one city that pops up. Next up is Mesopotamia, who is really starting to get weak. The fact that they couldn't prevent East Turkey from seceding shows how weak they have been getting. I should call them Cyprus, not East Turkey. Anyway, they want to change that, so they devise a plan to start exploring around the Black Sea, and eventually they actually connect up to the exploration of Persia. But basically they're exploring modern-day Russia and like the parts west of the Urals and establishing a massive colony there. But I will say they probably should have thought this through a little bit because it's on the other side of the Caucasus, and there's nothing stopping it from doing what it's about to do, which is Russia will just declare independence. Their capital will actually be all the way down here, which is fun. Following this, they will explore or colonize this land as well as around the rest of the Black Sea. And Mesopotamia doesn't really have the power to stop them. In fact, they can't even stop them from claiming the rest of the Caucasus. There's nobody living here, but they do claim it. One last thing before this episode ends. Actually, two more things. Okay. West and East India are going to go to war. And this is a religious thing because West India is allowing Orange religion people in their territory, and East India is a theocracy, and they're the most theocratic country in the world. There's a bunch of theocracies. These are the most theocratic country in the world. So they want to end West India and get rid of the Orange people because they're also kind of racist. And so they start at the southern tip, and the East Indian Army is traveling so fast that they're already here before the news gets to the capital, because there wasn't really an army fighting back. And all of a sudden Pakistan, which is also a theocracy but not nearly as theocratic as East India, also declares war on West India because they want some land back because they used to have a lot of land. And North India, who has the dynasty that used to control all of this land, also declares war on West India. And so West India will ask for help, and actually will get help in Persia, who declares war on Pakistan. And Pakistan is not doing well because they're much, much, much weaker than Persia. As West India immediately changes their fortunes and starts invading into Pakistan, taking their capital, they sign a ceasefire with North India and cut East India into two, so they can start forcing these guys back, although East India is getting them. Meanwhile, East India's colony is about to declare independence, and their capital is going to be all the way in the south, so we'll see how long they last, because they're not a very stable country in any remote way, but they are there. And with this, East India starts to get rebellions within its own borders, as people don't really like their theocratic rule, and they get pushed all the way to here before signing a ceasefire. Pakistan has been completely mutilated by the two powers and gets destroyed. And at this point, North India is like, you know what, I'm out. I'm just going to withdraw. And East India signs a humiliating peace treaty. Okay, this is what the peace treaty looks like. As you can see, West India has now become India, East India is still India, North India is still North India, and Pakistan is still Pakistan, but a lot smaller. Also, Vietnam now exists. I guess I should call them Thailand. We'll call them Thailand. And with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!